Hi, this is Mr. Moss, and in this video, we're going to be learning about number bonds and number trees. This is something I really enjoy teaching to kids, and kids really get a kick out of learning. Number bonds are a really simple way of building students' understanding of number sense and how numbers interact with one another, how numbers can fit together. And in its simplest form, this is a number bond. So we have the idea of two parts making a whole. So I could say 5, and that could be 2 and 3. I could also take it, you don't have to always draw the circles here. I could say 5, and that could decompose into 4 and 1. 5 could break up into in the other direction, 1 and 4. It's the same idea. But it doesn't always have to have two different parts here. For example, I could have 5 break up into 3 parts. I could have 2, 1, and 2. Or I could have 5 break up into 3 parts and say 1, 1, and 3. You get the idea. I can break it up into however many parts that I want, and obviously the biggest way of dividing it up is to break it up into 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. We call this process where you're breaking up numbers into different ways of recreating numbers. Right here, what you're seeing is a number bond. But the overall process, whether I'm drawing it out this way or anything else, the overall process of breaking up a number into smaller parts is called decomposing. You heard me mention that a moment ago. And it makes sense because, of course, when we're talking about decomposing, leaves in our yard, they're breaking down into smaller parts. And that's exactly what we do with numbers here when you're working with number bonds. And again, they can have the circles here. I can break it up into 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 5 pieces, however I decide I want to do it. So just to show you a few more examples of how I could break up my number bonds, I could do the number, let's say 12. And I could break that up into 6 and 6. I could break up 12 into 10 and 2. I could break up 12 into 5, 5 and 2. And I can continue and go on and on and on and on. You get the idea. It becomes a number tree when I decide I'm not going to stop with just 2 different parts. So let's continue with the number 12 this time. And I have the number 12, and let's see what I want to break it up into. Let's do 6 and 6. Now I can certainly break it up into even parts like that. I don't have to though. So let's take my 6, and I'm going to continue to break that up. Let's break that up into 4 and 2. And this 6, I'm going to break up into, let's do 3 parts. Let's say that's 3, 2, and 1. And it's the idea of understanding that we have different ways of making numbers. Here we're seeing that I can make 6 by combining 4 and 2. Here I can make 6 by adding 3 plus 2 plus 1. The idea of getting kids familiar with how numbers fit together, making this a common understanding for them. 4, I'm going to break this one up into 3 and 1. 2, obviously my only option really is to do 1 and 1 here, assuming I want to stick with whole numbers. 3, I'm going to do 2 and 1. 2 here becomes 1 and 1. That one is all finished. Keep going here. This 3, I'm going to do 1 and 2. These ones are done. This 2 becomes 1 and 1. That area is done. This 2 can become 1 and 1. And here we are. And you can almost imagine why we call this a number tree. Just because, if you start to imagine here, we've got the idea of a tree shape going on here. And what it helps us to recognize is that if I take all of my ones, which I fully decomposed 12 into, I should have, if I did it correctly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have my 12 ones right here, which of course make my 12. A number bond doesn't, number tree rather, doesn't have to go all the way until you have only ones, unless of course that's the direction that you've been given. If I take, let's choose something bigger like 30. I could break that up and I can say 16 and 14. And I can break up this. Let's do 4 parts and do 4, 4, 4, and 4. And for the 14, I'm going to do 7 and 7. And I'm going to do, let's say, 2 and 2 and 1 and 3. And well, you get the idea. The point is, a number tree, you can stop at any point. Unless somebody says, keep decomposing until you're at all ones. You can stop and say, if I just finish up this part here, 2 and 2, you can see you got to leave yourself plenty of room in a number tree. It's really easy to run out of room here. Let's do 5 and 2. Let's do 4 and 3. And I can say, okay, that's it. And what's pretty cool about this is, if we show this to students, we can remind them that 2 plus 2, well, that's 4. Plus 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8, plus 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12, plus 2 is 14, plus 2 is 16, plus 5 is 21, plus 2 is 23, plus 4 is 27, plus 3 equals 30. And here's our starting number. So again, great way to just help kids to understand number sense. The last thing that I want to say about number trees or number bonds is that there's no official right way. I started off breaking this up into 16 and 14. I could have done 29 and 1. I could have done 25 and 5. I can pick however I want. That's the beauty of number bonds and number trees. However, sometimes where they can be helpful, run out of scrap paper that's one-sided. Sorry about that. The beauty of number trees and number bonds is that it also allows you to learn a little bit about place value. Let's say I had a bigger number. Let's say I had 379. Well, I know from my place value that this represents 9 ones, that's 7 tens, and 3 hundreds. So I can work to understand, okay, yeah, I can break this up into so many different ways here. I can break that up into, 350, and I can break it up into 29. So many different ways in which I could divide it up. But in this case, I can use this opportunity to really study the place value and the worth of each of those places. So I can break up, in this case, 379, and say that I have 3 parts. You probably can tell where I'm going with this. I have 3 hundreds. 3 hundreds. I have 7 tens. So we know that that's worth 70. And 9 ones. This isn't any more correct than any other way I could divide it up, but this has the added benefit of reinforcing the idea of place value. And that's going to come in handy later on when students learn about the idea of expanded form and helping them to understand different ways to really work with numbers in their place values. So number bonds, number trees, a really, really cool activity for kids. It may seem juvenile, but they really get into it, even in 4th grade, looking at, okay, how big can I make it and how many different ways can I make it? It's a really neat launching activity for the year. This has been Mr. Moss talking with you about number bonds and number trees, and I hope this was a helpful guide for you. Have a great day.